Hey y'all, welcome to Adventures with Aggie. Today we have an awesome guest. I've known Professor Lee Igel for almost 4 years now, and he's going to give us a little bit of an analysis on past Super Bowls, and then we're going to talk about what we can expect in the Super Bowl that's happening this Sunday. So please welcome Professor Igel. Professor Igel, how are you doing today?
Hi, doing great, Aggie. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm so excited that you were able to join me on the show. But I'd love just to start with a little bit of an intro on yourself, maybe give us some background and what you do.
Sure. What do I do? Well, I think probably the way that we got connected is maybe a good starting point. So I'm a clinical professor at the NYU Tisch Institute for Global Sport. And in addition to teaching and other things that come with it, I head the NYU end of a collaboration that we have with the United States Conference of Mayors, the Mayors Professional Sports Alliance, which looks at and develops new knowledge on all things sports in cities, from youth and grassroots all the way up to the professional ranks. And I'm also involved a good deal in events and similar programs that we do through the Tisch Institute and in NYU's global network. So from New York City and across the US to got programs in the Middle East and Europe and all sorts of points in between. So it's a bit of what I do.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's perfect. I know you have background in events, obviously, and I've seen you speak about lots of different events and how these have been impacted by the current events that have happened this year, whether it's been COVID or other things. So I want to chat about the Super Bowl. We know it's going to look a little different this year, but I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on what has happened in the past, give like a little bit of an analysis on the Super Bowl, and then what we think is going to change with this year. Um, Obviously, reading SBJ, social media, everybody's freaking out, right, about all the different changes and stuff. But I think we'll just start with kind of like, can you talk about the economic impact of hosting one of these like mega events and how it impacts the city that it's in?
Sure. So in terms of the Super Bowl as a sports mega event, each sports mega event is different magnitude, different scale, and it's its own thing. So a few things to think about with that. One is, in terms of economic impact, the NFL says that it's somewhere, but the Super Bowl has somewhere between 300 and 500 million dollar positive impact on the economy, on the local economy. If you ask economists, they'll tell you that it's somewhere on a very good Super Bowl Sunday, somewhere between closer to about 30 million at best. One of the things that we do in our work with the mayors is we're able to look at how these mega events really impact cities, and part of that work is going beyond just the economic impact. So all the excitement is on economics; it's on revenue, all that, and the money needs to be generated in order to get things going. But there's been really a terrific development over the past probably 10 or 15 years, where we've seen social impact really come up into its own. And when we start to look at an event like a Super Bowl, it's really not enough to just talk about economic impact. You've got to talk about the social impact, because what we see is that where in the past, we sort of say, 30 years ago, the end of the 20th century, it's the economy, stupid. And if you are hooked into sports and sports business nowadays, you better know that it's the society, stupid. And so we're seeing a lot more where in the past it was the economics fed social, so quality of life, happiness, these sorts of things that make you want to live in a city. Right? Nobody lives in a city because they want to be a taxpayer. They live there because they want to be a resident. And now we're seeing much more of the social impacts feeding the economic impact. So if you get the social piece right, the economic part follows. And that's almost a flip of the script. That's something to look at when we look at a Super Bowl, and especially a Super Bowl during a major health crisis like a pandemic.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's one thing I definitely learned. That in the Tisch Institute, we always talk about the pride, of hosting an event. And I think, I mean, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama. If Birmingham ever hosted a Super Bowl, I would be so excited, right? I think that'd be great. But I guess back to the money that you were touching on earlier. It's like if Tampa's going to lose money, what are some of those benefits of hosting this event? Can you touch on that a little bit more?
Yeah, so for a city like Tampa, which is really a major center, it's become very quickly without a lot of people paying attention. It's become a real center of sports and sports business, which we can get into if you want to. But there's no question that with the pandemic, the economic impact for the city, which let's say it is somewhere between what the economists have it projected at and what the NFL has it projected at. So it's a pretty healthy number, but it's going to be less without question than it would be in sort of the old normal times. But for a city like Tampa, which is already on the move using sports-led economy, what we call a sports-led economy, this is really just sort of another notch on the belt. In a way. So there's so much happening in terms of sport and development through sport at the professional level and really down through the youth ranks that it's really just shining another light on another day on Tampa, Florida. And that's really the big takeaway. There's not going to be an easy way to make up what might have been, but that's not a problem. It's a reality. And for Tampa, it allows the city and the city leaders and the sports leaders to say, look, we've done this many different major events. They've had an NCAA Frozen Four for hockey there, ice hockey there, not too many years ago. So it's just another opportunity for Tampa in particular to say, we hosted the Super Bowl. By the way, we did it during the pandemic. And here are the things that were good about it. Here are the things that we learned. And here's Tampa.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's another thing that I've heard a lot about even the Olympics later this year is people want it to happen, like the people of these cities, just as a pat on the back, like we did it, we're human too, but we overcame it kind of thing. So I'm really excited. And I mean, obviously I love the Super Bowl, but I think it's really cool to see that Tampa is going to have that pull through kind of mindset. Because it's hard. Like we know all the changes that are happening and stuff this year, it's hard. And not to mention everything that's happened already. But yeah, we'll see. Cool. Well, let's go into, I guess, the fans, right? Like how are the fans going to be impacted by this? I feel like there's going to be more kind of interactive advertising and things because there will be less people in the stadium. But yeah, what do you think is going to happen with the viewership in relation to fans?
So this is one area where everybody's waiting to see what happens, and there are all sorts of ideas about what could happen. But a few things that we know. One is that, like in so many other aspects of business and life, activities of daily living, this pandemic has accelerated changes that were already taking place. And so there really isn't anything new or sort of, oh my gosh, we didn't see that one coming. It's just that it came along much faster than most people had anticipated. And so for sports, we see the same kind of thing happening. Lots of movement in things digital, lots of work being done in terms of fan engagement in ways that were sort of back burner or secondary or even less than that, somewhere in the filing system. So these are things that sort of been pushed up and a lot of attention to fans. Certainly, another thing to look at is sports teams and leagues need fans in order to generate that revenue so that they can keep going out on the field and on the pitch and on the court. So this is a period of time where there's actually been quite a good deal of experimentation going on and trying to understand what works and what doesn't in terms of fan engagement. So this is, it's a forced situation, but what an opportunity for sports to see some things that are innovative. And I would say in particular one area is certainly with esports and gaming, and how that has really just sort of, we're seeing some real examples, positive and productive examples of a much stronger relationship in areas that people sort of said, it's esports, we know we're supposed to maybe look into it, or that's something that happens over there. So we're seeing all these things sort of come together in a way that a number of people had anticipated, but it looked like it was going to take a while to get done.
Definitely. I think the experimentation piece that you were talking about just then is huge. I had another guest come on a few months ago, and he was saying that nobody taught him how to get like 10,000 cardboard cutouts printed within like a month. We didn't think we would ever have to do that, I guess. That's just one small example of all the different things that innovation and experiments that we're talking about that have happened. But that's crazy. I don't know how I would go about that.
Yeah, well, I think you do. You do know how you would go about it, because you would get it done. And it's really a moment where a good rule of thumb that comes up in a lot of the work that we do. That's constraints force creativity.
Yeah.
And this is one of those moments. So before the pandemic, maybe you didn't know what to do with 10,000 cardboard cutouts of fans, and all of a sudden it becomes a thing, and there's a constraint, and it forces you to figure out how to get out there and get that done.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think that kind of goes into what I want to transition into, the commercial advertising piece of this, right? Like the constraints, I think, is money for now. We've seen some like major companies pull out this year, and as far as their commercial breaks and things like that, and other kinds of sponsorships, what kind of effect do you think this will have long term with Super Bowl sponsors?
It's another interesting question, because one of the questions that's also been floating around since even before the pandemic is, sponsors were asking, what are we getting out of a Super Bowl commercial? What's really happening? And it created, there's a market there that over time had been developed that, well, you may, if you're not getting into it and your competitor does, you've got a problem. So you may want to get into it if you've got the resources to do it. But like we were just talking about, it's a real opportunity for, I wouldn't say experimentation, to try something, because you don't just sort of go out there and try something at the dollar amounts that are put in for Super Bowl advertising. But it's an opportunity really for, I think, organizations and companies to think through what it is that they're trying to do and what they're trying to message. And really a lot of the gold, or if you want to, kind of platinum standard, is Anheuser-Busch and the Busch Media Group, with the original kind of Budweiser, especially with the launch of Bud Light, Bud Bowl, and what it carried on. I know Budweiser won't have a Super Bowl commercial this year, but that's a company that, though its structure and leadership has changed, it does have in its archives this legacy of really creating a lot of what most people think about when it comes to Super Bowl commercials and Super Bowl advertising. It's kind of up there with that iconic Apple 1984 piece and all the other ones that you learn about. But this is really an opportunity, and you can see some companies doing it. They're, I think, not taking a step back, but sort of taking a pause to think about what it is that they really want to communicate, and when the timing is right to communicate a certain message. And we also live in a very different world. So I know something that we talk about in some of our courses is, in a very real way, Super Bowl commercials, back in the day, it was, you had to wait until that commercial ran during the Super Bowl, and it was kind of thing, everybody's sitting there. And now Super Bowl commercials tend to launch, you find them on YouTube sometimes weeks before the Super Bowl. And then if you happen to be sitting there and you didn't get up to go get something more to eat or go to the bathroom, you might see it again. That's a real question as to, what the content is, how it's distributed, when it's distributed, all these sorts of things. And that's a way of getting to say, what another time for really thinking through, I wouldn't say experimenting, but thinking through the messaging that the company wants to deliver.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like what you were talking about the competitor side, like if your competitor's doing it, you have to do it. I've heard so many times in the courses at NYU and in other places, like if Coke is doing it, we're doing it. Like because of how huge they are as a brand, everybody has to follow them. But I was thinking also, like personally, that Doritos commercial, the Darth Vader one from like a couple years ago, I don't know when it was, it didn't really make me buy Doritos. So when you were talking about the benefits, like, is it worth it? Like, is it worth the money that they're spending? Like, I don't know. I'm just one person, but I definitely did not buy Doritos because I saw that little Darth Vader commercial.
Well, you can have that conversation with Vince Gennaro, who's the dean of our program, because he launched an entire Doritos product way back. But I think one of the things also is really figuring out, each company, each organization has its reasons for getting into something like a Super Bowl commercial, and sometimes it really is. It is about brand awareness and not. It's such an overused term, but it really is about that and sort of the psychology of just getting the brand or the product in front of somebody's eyeballs. We're not big believers here in, well, because 3 million people viewed your commercial, you've been a success. That's wonderful for the people who count those kinds of beans. But if it doesn't convert into 3 million sales, who cares? It's a loss. There's psychology about just getting it in front of people's minds, let them know that it's out there, and eventually, Aggie, Doritos, you might be pulling them from the shelves one day. We don't know.
Maybe. I will say the Tide Pods commercial worked on me. I did buy Tide Pods after that, but
okay. Well,
Doritos
you
not
did
my
not
thing.
eat them though.
No, definitely not. Definitely
Okay.
not.
All right, you always got to check.
That one might have backfired on them a little bit, but
It happens.
yes, it does. Cool. You touched on this a little bit already, but I wanted to talk about new sponsorship spaces. So like we've seen in NBA, like the virtual fan board, Michelob Ultra, like that was super exciting. So what are some new spaces that you think will come from COVID that are requiring these sponsorships, commercial kind of advertising that might become permanent and that we'll see in the future?
Yeah, I don't know, because it's an area where marketing experts are way better at figuring out, and technology experts are way better at figuring out than I am. But to me, something that's compelling and that's been interesting is how much this period has actually gotten people to focus on the sports themselves and what's really going on, which is something I think could argue was starting to get away from what was being delivered and what people were viewing. So for all the talk about content and all these different tools that are out there, it's really about marrying those in a way that it's about marrying those tools with what the sport is all about. And this is kind of the moment to really start to think through those things, because it always happens whenever there's new technology, people get excited about it and want to throw it at everything. And there's a tendency to do it. But we have to remember that technology like that is it's a tool, right? All these devices and different platforms, they're tools to get something communicated, to get a message communicated to people. And so that's really, I think, where the interesting pieces on it is, what's the sport really about? Is it interesting? Or how can it still be interesting? And then how can you use that technology? Because at some point, the technology is not going to become so interesting anymore. And everybody will have seen it, and it'll be available to not just those who have the most means, but to everyone. And it's got to come back to, do you really just enjoy what's going on? Because that's a terrific human performance to watch.
Definitely. There were two thoughts here. One, the technology part of sports, I guess, and entertainment in general, I think it's made people realize that anybody can become a content creator, right? Like if you have a phone or some kind of camera or someone watching you, you can become a content creator, which we've seen, I think, even with all of these new influencers and stuff, even people that are, I guess, not sponsoring, but like endorsing the Super Bowl. Like I've seen it on their channels. It's like, oh, like I have 60 million TikTok followers. I'm going to post about the Super Bowl today. That's such an interesting new space that I think will probably continue because those followers on TikTok, they're not going anywhere. But that's something completely new, I think.
Yeah, it for sure is. And also figuring out, you know, for all the tools that we do have, figuring out what makes something go viral
Right.
is also still part of, a lot of the who knows.
Sure. Yeah,
So it's like
definitely.
right in there with what you were talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Um, Also, I wanted to ask you about this mixed reality situation as well. We've seen a lot of the virtual augmented reality kind of experiences coming because people can't go to the arenas or even do a stadium tour or something like that. What do you think that's going to look like this year? I know they tried some mixed reality things last year. I feel like it was very mixed response from the fans. But yeah, I don't know. What do you think that we're going to see this year?
Uh, I think we're going to see a little bit more of what you were just getting at, which is kind of a mixed review of mixed technology and mixed use of technology. Some of it's because for advanced as things are becoming, the technology just isn't there yet. And some of it is also because for as good as the technology is, uh, it really depends on who the user is, right? So some of it for sports fans, there are people who just want to sit and watch a game, and that's it. Don't give me all this other stuff. I want to watch the game. I might listen to a little commentary, but I know where I go for the commentary, and I don't need all these things popping up and sticking a device on my head and extra glasses, and just give me the game. And there are people sort of on, I'd say, kind of on the other end of the pole, who are really into technology. And they go, well, this is cool. I'm interested because it's the technology that kind of wins out, and I want to try it in this format because it's now available. And of course, there are bunches of people in the middle of all that, and that's kind of the interesting thing about it. But at the end of the day, uh, in talking to most people in sports business and the decision makers in sports business, there's no question that for all of the really interesting technology, and there's some great stuff out there. The NBA, among other leagues, I mean, just U.S. domestic, has all sorts of great stuff going on that almost makes the game look like a video game, like a real game look like a video game. And so for all these kinds of things, at the end of the day, you talk to the decision makers, and there is without fail thing they come back to is, yeah, but if we don't have an interesting game going on the field, on the court, on the pitch, the rest of this stuff is just it is not worthless, but it has a diminishing return. How's that for using a good business term there?
It's perfect. I love it. Yeah, no, I totally agree. I think that people obviously turn on the Super Bowl to watch, or I guess for the most part, they're watching it for the football. Maybe sometimes the commercials, depending on how avid of a sports fan they are. But I think that's another really cool thing about the, I guess, phenomenon that is the Super Bowl, right? Like people watch it for different reasons. Like I'm not even a huge NFL fan. Like I'm an Alabama football fan, but I'll watch because odds are one of those players is in it. So um, I think that the background also goes into like this viewership stuff that we're going to see and like just the curiosity that people are going to have about this Super Bowl, even if they've never watched one before. Same with the Olympics and things like that. Like I think more people are going to watch it just because they want to see what's going on, which is, I think that'd be really cool to watch and see what the response is like as well. But we'll see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, it's really, just to respond to that. It's really uh, sports often gets kind of relegated to the toy department. Nobody takes it really seriously. It's not important. Oh my goodness! When you have some of the viewership numbers that we see with the NFL, or some of the impact, certainly the social impact that's made by athletes and teams and leagues to things going on in our larger world. And you see the way that the WNBA had real impact in a major political race, in political campaigns. And that's not, by the way, a political. It's just it's a social reality,
Right.
And certainly sports has carried the cord for a lot of progress in society. So it's it's not really a head scratcher that the Super Bowl would have become a social phenomenon.
Right. Yeah. I think out of all of the changes and things that have happened in the last year, people have demanded sports. Like they wouldn't let it go away for too long. It did go away for a little bit, but people wanted it. They craved that. But I don't know. I'm so excited to see what happens this weekend. But I guess just to kind of wrap up here, my favorite question that I've been looking forward to. What are you most looking forward to at the Super Bowl this year? We've talked about a lot of things, so I don't know which one you're going to pick because I don't know how I would pick.
Yeah, so the question is a great one, and actually, in a class last night, somebody asked this, and it caused all sorts of controversy. I don't know why, but I'm really looking for two things. One, there's no question that that the storylines, this is the great thing about sport, right? The storylines of I think so much concentration on Tom Brady and Patrick Mahomes and older, not old, but older and younger. And these things that's certainly something to watch. I think there's some people we were talking last night in this class actually about, do people want to see Tom Brady win another one? And it's like, oh my gosh, of course, Tom Brady's going to do it again. Or do you want to see him lose so that Patrick Mahomes can win for a second time? Right. I mean, there's all these kind of really human storylines and these angles. Their coaches, the head coaches have their own storylines. The organizations have their own storylines. The Super Bowl champion last year, and now a team that didn't make the playoffs is in there. So I think there are those things. The biggest thing I'm really looking at is something that colleague and I, Art Kaplan, who we do a lot of work together on things, sports and health and society. And we were just talking a little earlier and said, we've been kind of on this beat that sports is considered non-essential during a pandemic, right. But it certainly turns out to be vital. And that's really the thing that most looking forward to seeing is how all of that kind of plays out on the field, in the stands, and in the community. And sort of this, it's in the Tisch Institute, we call it this transformational power of sport. And that's the piece. And of course, let's just, a good game.
Yeah, definitely. I think this pandemic has also shown that these athletes are human too. People think of them as these machines and beast people, but I mean, they can also get COVID, unfortunately, but it's so real now. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about earlier with the pride in having the event and making it happen and overcoming that during the pandemic is going to be really exciting to watch. But I could go on about how excited I am, but we won't do that. Awesome. Well, Professor Igel, thank you so much for coming on and giving us a little bit of insight. Thanks for giving me the time.
All right. You are welcome. What a pleasure to be on with you. And thanks for the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Professor, for coming on the show and sharing a bit of your background as well as what we might see this weekend. Can't wait for the Super Bowl. I hope everybody tunes in. And I hope that this episode gave you a little bit of insight into the business of the Super Bowl and what's going on and what we might potentially see. But stay tuned for more episodes of Adventures with Aggie next Monday.